Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome into Best on the Board here at The Athletic, presented by BetMGM. Michael Beller and Casey Joyner here with you to talk through our Week 3 best bets. Casey, it was a rough week for us in Week 2, but we'll talk through that in a second here. How you doing getting into this Week 3 after kicking off last night with the Panthers taking care of business against the Texans?
Yeah, except for Christian McCaffrey, fantasy owners were pulling their hair out. It's why I tell fantasy owners, when you've got those great backs, you have to handcuff them. You don't have a choice. The percentages are so much in your favor. Think of last year with Mike Davis. This year, if you didn't have Chuba Hubbard, you're struggling going forward if that's an injury that comes up again.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that ends up working out. Chuba Hubbard looked, decent enough in that emergency duty he was thrust into. Royce Freeman could be involved for the Panthers as well. But that's a topic that we'll tackle on the Monday edition of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. You and I, Casey, we are here to get into Week 3 best bets. We have to look back. We do it every week. We keep everything open, transparent. We want you to know exactly where we stand. And where we stand was relatively ugly a week ago, KC. You went 0-3. I will say very close. You had the Rams minus 3.5. They won by 3. You had Aaron Jones going over 68.5 rushing yards, 67 rushing yards. And the impact, that was just sort of fluky. Like with what he did in the receiving game and scoring 4 touchdowns, I think your process was right on with Aaron Jones. He just happened to do a little bit more of his damage in the passing game than we were expecting in the running game, but got to feel at least good about that, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I remember it's something doing the fantasy world, something to do the gaming world, that you do trust the process. And that process sometimes is going to stumble on occasion, but you do trust the process. And over the long haul, I always tell people, you don't think about this in the 1 week term. You're thinking about this in a longer sense. And as we get more evidence in the season, that's when you're going to get even better picks, because now you've got a lot more evidence to back the thing. So just a 1 week road bump.
Exactly. We are definitely Sam Hinkie fans here on Best on the Board. 1-2 for me. My win coming on the Titans +6, and they went outright. Jonathan Taylor falling short of the receiving yard mark I had him at. Like the Cardinals, minus 3.5 against the Vikings. They win, but do not cover the spread. So we're both sitting at 2-4 on the season. Let's turn that around here, KC, in Week 3. 3 picks apiece. Give us your first pick for Week 3 weekend ahead of us.
My first pick would be, let's just I'll go with Vegas and Miami then. It's Miami at Vegas. And here's the thing. Derek Carr, he leads the league in pass attempts and passing yards. He's going to be playing this week. He had the ankle injury, but he is going to be able to play. What's amazing for this is everybody thinks of him as a dink and dunk passer. This year, he ranks 5th in vertical pass attempts. They're going vertical. Teams are playing zone against the Raiders more than any other team in the league. He's destroying those coverages. But if you play man coverage against him, which the Dolphins may try and do, he's averaging 10.9 yards per attempt per True Media Pro Football Focus. That's 4th best in the league. It's incredible. So he put that up against the Ravens and the Steelers. Now he's got Miami. Okay, it's a tough defense, but look, he did it against 2 really good defenses. You also have Tua. The Dolphins are missing Tua. They're going to have Jacoby Brissett. They're facing a Raiders defense that ranks 5th in pass pressure rate, despite having the lowest blitz rate in the league by far. They're just doing it with standard pass rush. They're not bringing any extras. Combine it with it being a cross-country road trip from Miami. They're going to face that rowdy Las Vegas crowd. There's so many things in favor of the Raiders in this one. I think -4 is a bargain for them.
Yeah, am I crazy for thinking that this should be like 5.5 or 6? Like 4 just feels way too low. The Raiders have wins over the Ravens and the Steelers this year, and the Steelers have plenty of offensive question marks, but no one's questioning their defense. And TJ Watt got hurt in that game, but he played the bulk of it. I feel like this should be at least 1.5 or 2 points higher than the 4.
Yeah, and again, Tua's gone. You got Jacoby Brissett. Yeah. He looked terrible last week. And the Raiders, I think people, again, they're underrating their defense, where it's not a great Raiders defense. You lead the league in pass pressure rate. It's 2 games, and you did it against, again, the Steelers. We know they can pass block, and the Ravens are pass blocking too. So and again, it's a cross-country road trip, and you've got Jacoby playing his first game with them. I just keep looking at that going, I see very few paths to victory for this one in Miami, and if they're going to lose, I think it's going to be. I would be surprised to see Raiders, like you said. I would be surprised to see them win by a touchdown, but I think -4 is easy money. I think.
Yeah, our Vegas Raiders beat writer Vic Tafer is with you on that. Being slept on, this defense a little bit nationwide, and it's understandable with the defense they've played in recent years and with what Derek Carr is doing, but it's a group that's better than we've become accustomed to in the John Gruden Part 2 era with the Raiders, and so maybe we get a little bit more eye-opening for that Raiders defense this week. For my first pick, KC, I am going to one of the many marquee games we have on the schedule. Packers and 49ers on Sunday night, Chiefs and Chargers on the slate, and then Rams and Buccaneers. And that's where I'm going with my first pick. Rams are 1-point underdogs at home in this game, and I like the Rams in this spot, KC. And I'm just going to focus on one particular element of this game that I like a lot. We've heard this so many times over the last couple of years. If you want to slow down Tom Brady, if you want to slow down the Buccaneers passing game, you put pressure up in his face, ideally up the middle, right? And it's become one of those things that, like, you say to sound smart about football, right? It just sort of automatically imbues you with this know-how when it comes to breaking down X's and O's. But it's also true. We got to this point because it's true. And you go back to last year when these two teams met, one of Tom Brady's worst games of the season, because the Rams were able to bring consistent pressure right in his face, up the middle, make him uncomfortable, and throw off everything that the Buccaneers want to do down the field. So I think this is a uniquely bad matchup for the Buccaneers and Tom Brady, insofar as a matchup can be bad for this offense. I'm not saying the Rams are going to hold them to 13 or 17 points and win this game. I still think you need to get up into the mid-20s, score 24, score 27. That's where you need to get to win this game. But I think the Rams can do that on their side of the ball and then slow the Buccaneers down to the extent that they do end up winning this game 27-24 or 24-21 or 24-23, whatever the case might be. No Antonio Brown, most likely for the Buccaneers. That isn't guaranteed just yet, but he is on the COVID-19 list. Just with the protocols, it seems like it's going to be hard for him to check all the boxes he needs to check to get cleared to play this game on Sunday. And he's been a key part of that offense. You take him off the board for Bruce Arians, and things are going to change. They, of course, have the reinforcements to make up for that, but it still is a change for this offense and a loss for this offense against a very strong defense that I think it'll be hard for them to weather. This is also their first road trip of this season. They've been at home since the middle of August, whenever their last preseason game was. They haven't left Tampa since then. So I just think all these things add up. And then, that Rams team, pretty darn good in its own right. I hope Darrell Henderson plays for the sake of this bet, but I think they can paper over that loss if he is unable to go. So I really like the Rams here. I think they should be favored. I think they should be -1 or -1.5. I wouldn't expect them to get up to the default -3 when we have two evenly matched teams. You just throw a -3 on the home team and let it be. I understand why they're not getting that level of respect, but it feels to me like they should be the favorite in this game by 1.5 or so. So I really like them catching a point in this one.
I can't understand why we talked about the Raiders defense being underrated. The Bucs are great on run defense, but their pass defense, I mean, they lost Sean Murphy-Bunting in week 1, and they've not looked that good. Atlanta couldn't get a thing done against Philadelphia in week 1, and last week they looked a lot better. It's one of those things where, and now you're facing the Rams. I don't think they're going to be, I agree with you that I think the Rams should be a slight favorite in this one because of those factors. And because, again, this Bucs defense, I think they'll be great as the season goes along, and they're still good against the run. But I think their secondary they've got some coverage problems back there.
Yeah, you look at the final score of that game, and it seems like the Buccaneers won it going away, but a couple of pick sixes late in that game. That was a 3-point game halfway through the third quarter. It was 28-25, and that was a game where the Falcons fought back, and Matt Ryan looked really good after halftime. I mean, that was a game that was definitely in the balance before those pick sixes for the Buccaneers. So you can throw on this Buccaneers team right now, and we've seen what Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford have been able to do together in their first 2 games this season. Really do like the Rams in this spot. I think now obviously +1 if I'm backing them. I think it's going to be a game that the Rams win outright. Let's move on over to the Browns and the Bears. The big quarterback news in this game, of course, is that Justin Fields is getting his first career start in Cleveland, so he gets to make that start in front of a lot of people who were cheering for him a year ago when he was at Ohio State, and now will be cheering against him, at least on Sunday. I think he's probably got a lot of people who, in neutral situations, are still going to be pulling for him. It's the quarterback on the other side of this game that you want to talk about, though.
Yeah, it's Baker Mayfield, excuse me, over 243.5 passing yards. Mayfield has 321 passing yards in week 1, 213 yards in week 2. He's averaged over 10 yards per attempt in both contests. So he beat this number in week 1, came very close in week 2. The Bears, they rank dead last in vertical yards per attempt allowed. That's yards per attempt allowed on passes thrown 11 or more yards downfield. Opposing passers are 10 for 13 for 295 yards, 3 TDs, and no interceptions on vertical passes. They're crushing Chicago. Now, Browns lost Jarvis Landry for this matchup. They might get OBJ back, but Landry's only got 6 catches for 80 yards anyway, so it's not like he's the centerpiece of that offense. He's not driving that passing game. They've got people I think who could fill in his place. And you also add in Cleveland ranks 27th on their defensive side of the ball in vertical yards per attempt, which means I think there's going to be a lot of passes going both ways. And I add all that to that factor. And again, that Bears secondary just looks terrible. I just think that Mayfield's going to have to throw the ball enough to be able to get over 243.5.
Yeah, it does sound like OBJ is going to be back out there for the Browns this week. So you like that certainly for Baker Mayfield. And the Bears secondary has been a problem. You got Jalen Johnson, who you can trust, and then really not a whole lot else. You know that they are probably looking at some of those contracts, Tariq Cohen and Jimmy Graham, and saying, man, really wish we had some of that money lying around for Kyle Fuller and he didn't have to be a cap casualty going off to Denver, because they could certainly use a corner like him opposite Jalen Johnson. I guess the one spot where I would push back would be because of Justin Fields starting. Maybe the Bears, we see something a little bit conservative out of them. We know Fields is going to have way more run options in the game plan than we would ever see with Andy Dalton. And then on Cleveland's side of the ball, they always want to run it. They always want to do that with Nick Chubb and with Kareem Hunt. And going up against a Bears front that could be without Eddie Goldman yet again, could be a vulnerable front against that Browns rushing attack. So I suppose minimal concern for you there that this is a game that's dominated by both teams' rushing attacks?
I would. The thing that gets me is that Bears defense ranking that badly in your vertical yards per attempt. I just don't think the Kevin Stefanski is gonna let that go unchallenged. And again, if you just hit a couple of big passes, if you get a couple, a couple 30, 40-yard passes, I think he's averaging 10 yards per attempt. You get a couple of big passes, suddenly now he only needs 160 yards on the other passes, and they'll throw the ball enough to get there. I just think he's going to be able to hit at least one big pass. And if OBJ's back and can play, if he's just even enough in coverage to make the Chicago cover him, make Chicago at least recognize he's there and say, okay, we have to pay a lot of attention to him. If he's there and he can do that, that adds to the mix as well. So I just think though that they're going to be able to hit enough long passes, because when I see a defense play this badly, it just a coach is not going to let that go unchallenged if he can help it. And with Baker Mayfield throwing when you're averaging 10 yards per attempt, you're hitting vertical passes too. I just think they're not going to let it go unchallenged. So.
Van Jefferson, a 74-yard touchdown against this Bears team in week 1. Jamar Chase, a 44-yard touchdown against this Bears team in week 2. You absolutely can attack this team deep with dynamic receivers. OBJ certainly fits that bill. I'm going to pull us back to one of the marquee games. It is Chargers. It is Chiefs. It is at Arrowhead. It has an over-under of 55, and I think the Chargers live up to their end of the billing in this one. Give me over 23.5 points for the Chargers in this game, KC. 4th in the NFL in yards, 26th in the NFL in scoring are these Los Angeles Chargers, and it all comes down to the fact that they have been bad in the red zone. 10 red zone possessions for the Chargers this year. That's tied for first in the NFL with the Buccaneers. They've turned those 10 possessions into 3 touchdowns. They have 2 turnovers in the red zone and 3 touchdowns. For comparison's sake, the Buccaneers, 7 touchdowns on their 10 trips inside their opponent's 20. And those turnovers, very fluky. One of them was a Justin Herbert interception last week where Keenan Allen fell down after the ball was already on its way to him. Another one was a sack fumble that probably should have been ruled an incomplete pass in week 1, and this one tumbles out of the end zone and ends up being a touchback for Washington. So not only turnovers, but fluky turnovers in the red zone. The Chargers are really doing everything you want to see from an offense. They are moving the ball. They are moving the ball efficiently. You look around and you see big statistical production from Mike Williams already this season, and Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler, Justin Herbert doing his thing in year 2. It's just they're not finishing things off when they get in scoring range. I think that changes for them this week. And John Harbaugh showed us all a week ago that when you play the Chiefs, and you know what, frankly, Kevin Stefanski showed us this in week 1 also. When you go against the Chiefs, you have to go and win with the mindset, we need 30 to win. We're not holding this team to 24 points. We need to go in and we need to score 30. And if we score 30, then we give ourselves a chance. And so I bet Brandon Staley is going to take that lesson well and be aggressive in this game when his team has the ball. And I just think you add all that up, you stack all that up, you stack up the fact that this team has frankly just been better than 23.5 points. They've been able to pile up those yards, that they're going to have that aggressive mindset, that they can keep up with what Kansas City does offensively, and that this over-under sits at 55.5. So their implied team total actually is a point higher than what this thing sits at here. So I really think you put all that together, and this line puts a little bit too much looking back as to what the Chargers have done and not really what they can be and what their underlying numbers suggest their offense really is. I like them getting over this number.
I did a study a few years ago, and I update it every year about how teams do in shootout games, where each team scores 24 or more points. And the best offenses in NFL history, you take a couple of outliers out of the process for the best offenses in NFL history. I'm talking offenses scored 500 or more points in the season. Their record in shootout games is just barely over 500. And that's why when you have a team go into a game like this, the Chargers are going to say, we need to go ahead and turn this into a shootout. Andy Reid, that's one of the reasons that in 2019 he had the Chiefs start to run the ball more later in the year, because he realized they would fall victim to the same thing. Their record in shootout games was just as bad. They're a 500 team. Kansas City is, or maybe even a little bit worse based on their track record when they get in shootout contests. So I think, the Chargers are going to be motivated to say we have to score at least 24, just to get the shootout, and then closer to 30 to win that contest. And like you said, they're doing so near the red zone. And they got Eckler involved in the passing game last week. 0 targets in week 1 with a catch, 9 passes last week.
Nine targets, 9 catches.
It's incredible.
And you got Mike Williams thriving in that Michael Thomas role. Joe Lombardi, we loved it. We talk about it all the time when an OC, because he wasn't an OC in New Orleans, but when a new coach takes over and he comes from this, Team X, and now can he bring what Team X did to Team Y? And it doesn't always play out that way. But Joe Lombardi in just 2 games really does look like he's making Mike Williams something of a Mike Thomas. He's making Austin Eckler something of an Alvin Kamara. And they have the pieces, right? The Chargers have the pieces to be prime Saints right away. Just like that. They can flip a switch. They can do it. And I think we're seeing that happen right now. Give me the Chargers to score at least 24 points against the Chiefs, and what's going to be a really, really fun game on Sunday. Best on the board. If you are with us here, you probably agree that football's just a little bit more fun when you have some skin in the game. Our betting partners at BetMGM are going to help you do just that. Get yourself a deal at BetMGM right now. Bet 10 to win 150 plus. Get a free 3-month subscription to The Athletic, and that is for new Athletic subscribers or existing ones. If you're an existing subscriber, we're going to tack 3 months on to that subscription for free if you take advantage of this deal from the king of sportsbooks. Just go to betmgm.com/TA-best. Again, bet 10 to win 150. Get yourself a free 3-month subscription to The Athletic at betmgm.com/TA-best. This is an offer for new BetMGM customers. Terms and conditions apply. All right, KC, one more pick a piece. If you could see, I'm going to bump you out for just one more second. No, you can't see it. If you could see just above my head here, there is a panoramic picture of Camp Randall Stadium in Madison, Wisconsin. I am a very proud Wisconsin graduate. Go Badgers against Notre Dame on Saturday. And so I can't go against you with this next one that you've got here, because Melvin Gordon's got a place right here in my heart, always will.
Melvin Gordon over 13.5 receiving yards in this contest. He's already tallied 17 and 38 receiving yards in the first 2 games this season, so he's trending towards that on his track record alone. It gets better when the Jets have been abysmal at covering running backs this year. They've allowed 18 targets to running backs. They've allowed 18 completions for 140 yards. It's the 3rd highest yardage mark to that position, and the yards per target ranks 25th. Merge those trends with just what I think Denver's going to be able to, how central he is to their passing game. I know they split when they do the carries, when they're doing running carries. He's the pass catching back. They're not giving Javonte Williams the pass catching statistics. And I'll guarantee that Denver knows that the Jets are not covering the running backs very well. So you're talking 13.5 receiving yards. I think he's got a very good shot at that, given how badly the Jets are covering running backs right now.
I'm with you there. I will point out that they have played the Panthers and the Patriots this season, so they've seen a couple of good pass-catching backs in Christian McCaffrey and James White. Go Badgers once again. But I think that this trend does follow. And even though they've seen those high-end pass-catching backs, they're also just not a particularly great defense right now. And Melvin Gordon proved his chops as a pass catcher his last year with the Chargers, and then carried that over with the Broncos a season ago. So this one really doesn't ask for too much. I've been burned by not asking for too much out of receiving backs over the last couple of weeks, so I'm staying away from it myself, but I follow the logic in getting Melvin Gordon to 14 receiving yards this week. For my last one, I'm going to take a little bit of a shot on a plus 125. Vikings to score more than 3.5 touchdowns in what I think is going to be a shootout between the Seahawks and the Vikings. Let's rewind 1 week, KC. Seahawks go up against the Tennessee Titans. A lot of similarities between what Tennessee wants to do offensively and what Minnesota wants to do offensively. They both got a big bruising back, Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook. They both have 2 alpha receivers, Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. They have offenses that use a lot of play action. They have efficient, accurate quarterbacks, Ryan Tannehill and Kirk Cousins. And so I think the Vikings can look at what the Titans did in the second half of that game, really getting blitzed by Seattle. And I don't mean literally blitzed by the defense, but I mean they were just getting run out of the field, run out of the stadium by Seattle in the first half. And then they got back to their play action game. They end up coming back from a 15-point halftime deficit, forcing overtime and winning that game. And Derrick Henry gets all the credit, which, he certainly should. He had a 60-yard touchdown run. He had 3 touchdowns in that second half. But Ryan Tannehill got back to being the Ryan Tannehill we've come to expect from Tennessee. Completed 16 to 22 passes, 176 yards, 8 yards per attempt. A lot of efficiency, made some big plays down the field. We saw Julio Jones get going. It all adds up to a blueprint that I think the Vikings can follow. And then you look on the other side of this game, what gives you any confidence that the Vikings are going to slow down Russell Wilson in this passing game? They have looked bad again this season, and we wanted to give Mike Zimmer the benefit of the doubt coming into this year because he is a great defensive coach, and we just never see bad defenses from him. We saw it last year, but it was easy to hand wave it, say it was a weird season, say every coach is, allowed to have one bad year in what is his specialty. They had a lot of injuries. Minnesota did as well on the defensive side of the ball last year, so they get those guys back. They bring in a couple of reinforcements, and it has still just been ugly for this team this season. So I don't see why they would suddenly turn it around against Russell Wilson with what that team has done through the first couple of weeks of the season. So I expect a high-scoring game here, and I think the Vikings can keep pace. I actually like the Vikings a little bit, catching 1.5 at home in this game, but I think it's because of what their offense can do in this one. So I'll take the plus money. It's at plus 125. If this was, even just plus 105, I'm probably staying away from it. But plus 125 is a juicy enough number for me to say, you know what, the Vikings can find the end zone 4 times in this one. I think they can keep pace with Seattle. Seattle's going to force them to keep pace and get this game into the 30s. I like the Vikings quite a bit here.
Yeah, it's another one of those situations where both these teams are playing defense badly enough to where you think a shootout is necessary. And Mike Zimmer doesn't want to get in a shootout. Doesn't have a choice. His defense is just that. When your defense is that bad, if your defense is that bad and you try to play the low-scoring game, you're going to lose. I mean, you have to get into a shootout in that instance. And the thing is, Seattle is kind of in the same boat. I don't think that they necessarily want to get into shootout games or want to get into high-scoring games, but they go vertical. In fact, DK Metcalf, I did a study for my athletic article that comes out every Monday, and where I look at the fantasy how fantasy things went for teams past week, and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, thank you. They both, if you look at their vertical receiving numbers, they're both getting targeted deep a lot, and they're both having a lot of success. Lockett's doing better, and Metcalf's going to catch up. The point is that they're still doing a ton of vertical passing, and that's something that they were doing early last year, and then they changed their minds and said we're going to try and play more close to the vest. I don't think that they're in a situation where they can play close to the vest either. So if you get into a shootout contest, 4 touchdowns is very doable.
Yeah, Pete Carroll and Mike Zimmer might want to play low-scoring games, both of them. But unless they contact like Bill Belichick and Sean Payton, 2 coaches who are facing off against one another, and say, let's just trade our entire teams. We'll give you our 53, you give us your 53. I don't think they're going to be playing in very many low-scoring games. The personnel is the personnel, and Minnesota and Seattle are 2 good offensive teams, 2 bad defensive teams. I like the Vikings to be able to keep pace and score those 4 touchdowns, and that will do it for this episode of Best on the Board. We still have our 50% off deal going at The Athletic. If you are not a subscriber, go to theathletic.com/best and get yourself 50% off a 1-year subscription to The Athletic. For Casey Joyner, I am Michael Beller. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. Happy betting. We'll talk to you soon.